Good morning and grand rising. Welcome to the show that knows if you mess around, you will absolutely find out. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests on Friday, 2025. It is exactly 9 a.m. GMT, and we have the busiest show. We have the busiest show today. Good morning. Crazy Bunny says it's a stunning day in Edinburgh. It's a bit parky here, lass, in southwest Greater London. And welcome to Wake Up on this full moon day. And please follow viewer Annie's suggestion in the comments that the entrance fee to our show is simply a like. How wonderful is that? Okay, peeps, I've been talking about the full moon this weekend in Virgo, on top of which Virgo's ruling planet Mercury is going retrograde. This is an intense time if you haven't already realized. First of all, make sure to check all your communications and travel arrangements. Is your email okay? Your travel tickets, your website, anything else that broadcasts you to the world. If you are due a problem in the area of communications, it's likely to hit about now. Make sure to back up your computer. This is like a life review for many people. This is literally a moment of truth for you to decide if you like what you see about yourself or whether it's time to finally make that change. Some people will have gone too far and found themselves boxed into a cage of their own creation. Some may be dealing with the law and other rules and restrictions. Whatever you are facing, it's time to face it head on. It may be the pattern of a lifetime that has brought you here, and it's time to step back, assess, and change course. Now, kids, let's do this. Happy Friday, everyone. Hello, Jenny from the block and Mikey B. And Mikey B said, I ain't got a pooter. I got you. I got you loud and clear. Thank you, Lenticular Cloud. Thank you for that beautiful sun I see in the comments. How are you all? Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate that. Morning, Health Freedom UK. Dr. Robert, not a doctor. What's on Wake Up today? Well, I will be joined very shortly by the rather fabulous Whom by Fire. They've only been cancelled again. This is the problem with wrong think. This is the problem. And at 9:30 a.m., I'll be joined by Dr. Niall McCrae, who is also standing up to be counted. At 10 a.m., I'll be joined by body coach Red Willow. Spring is a springing, and there is seldom a better time to improve your health. And we have a fantastic giveaway for 2 viewers. Do not miss this. We'll also be doing a tribute to the wonderful statement analyst, Peter Hyatt, who will be laid to rest today. And Dumblaine, yesterday was the 29th anniversary since the Dumblaine massacre of innocent school children and their teacher. I'll be reflecting on that. And what about the inhumanity of Labour attacking the most vulnerable? Well, we're still waiting to see exactly what they're going to be doing with their welfare reforms, but it's going to be a return to austerity, even though Sir Keir Rodney Starmer says it isn't. Don't believe him, because we know he's a liar, right? And LUCY LETBY manslaughter investigation. This is getting interesting. And Pride, child predators convicted. And we will end the show with, what stage are you in your dark night of the soul? Many of us have been there. I certainly have. I thought I was never going to leave it, but I got through it. And as we often say around here, we do news differently. And you know why? Because someone had to. Oh, yes, indeedy. Indeedy. Right, let's kick off with some news. And I bet that's a day you won't forget, Crazy Bunny. Right, kick off with some news. Staff at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Now, that may ring some bells for you. The Countess of Chester Hospital is where LUCY LETBY was convicted of murdering 7 babies and convicted of the attempted murder of a further 7. Well, obviously, many people are debating those convictions. Indeed, they are. In fact, on Monday, I will be attempting to live stream Wake Up from outside the Thirlwell inquiry in Liverpool. Thirlwell inquiry, of course, is the inquiry looking into the convictions of LUCY LETBY and how it was allowed to happen. But wait a second. Staff at the Countess of Chester Hospital could also face prosecution in connection with the deaths of these babies. This is an interesting and not unwelcome development at last. And police have now said that several individuals are now being investigated for gross negligence manslaughter. And detectives have upgraded their criminal investigation from a corporate manslaughter inquiry against the Countess of Chester Hospital to include those employed during the time Lucy Letby was said to have harmed those babies. This is going to get very interesting indeed. And Cheshire Police obviously won't reveal what staff they're talking about. It's too early in the investigation. But many people who have researched this case and know there is a problem with it may have a jolly good idea. Yes, indeedy, I certainly do. If people are charged and convicted, the maximum sentence for gross negligence manslaughter is life in jail. And as I say, on Monday, I'll be outside the Thirlwell inquiry. There is a protest taking place. This is going to get very interesting. Cheshire Police said as our inquiries have continued, the scope of the investigation has now widened to also include gross negligence manslaughter. This is a separate offence to corporate manslaughter and focuses on the grossly negligent action or inaction of individuals. It is important to note that this does not impact on the convictions of Lucy Letby for multiple offences of murder and attempted murder. There's Cheshire Police still gripping on to their convictions. Indeed, we shall see how that develops. And I'm not going to go in too deep on what Sir Keir Rodney Starmer had to say yesterday. Obviously, he's talking about the actually getting rid of NHS England. This will not impact Scotland, Wales or Ireland. NHS England is essentially a further bureaucratic arm to do with NHS. Well, obviously, as you can imagine, people are immediately going, there must be something bad about this. This must be there to harm us. And one of them is Debbie Evans, formerly of UK Column. She says, I'll tell you exactly what it means abolishing NHS England. It's all part of the grand plan. I've been warning of this for years and you're only just catching up. I warned about 10 years ago, probably like Debbie, about the problems that were inherent with what they were doing with the NHS in terms of their health and social care bill. And we shall see whether this actually assists the NHS or depletes it further. I'm hoping to be joined on Monday by somebody who understands these things a great deal better than I do. We shall see. We shall see. And next week, Keir Starmer is going to be announcing his cuts. This is once again government betraying the vulnerable. Shame, shame on this Labour government for following the old attack dogs on the sick and disabled. This is austerity all over again. And make no mistake about it. Very similar, actually, to what is happening in the US, where Elon Musk and Donald Trump are not just cutting waste. There is a lot of waste to be cut, both in the UK and the US. But on both sides of the Atlantic, they are also attacking social security, which includes some of the most vulnerable in society. Well, it's a grand plan, people. What do you want from me? So we shall see what Sir Keir Rodney Starmer, taking the knee, has to say next week regarding the cuts. I would suggest they're going to go after PIP. That's personal independent payment. They always do. They're talking about freezing it. But generally, for the most part, we do not have the issue that they always claim. They always start on the most vulnerable of society. You can literally tell what a society is like when they attack sick, disabled and elderly. And that is not the society that I want to be part of. That is not why I pay my tax. And I do pay my tax. Right. Okay, I want to move on to this before I bring in our next guest. We talked about this man before. His name is Stephen Ireland. He is the co-founder of Surrey Pride. He and volunteer David Sutton, also his partner, were convicted yesterday of multiple child sex offences. In fact, Stephen Ireland was convicted of raping a child. That's right. That's right. And so they will be sentenced on the 30th of June. There's so many that these are multiple offences here. Let me just work through some of them. Stephen Ireland was found guilty of the rape of a child under 13, 3 counts of causing a child under 13 to engage in sexual activity, and the sexual assault of a child under 13, as well as conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with a child, arranging commission of a child, 6 counts of making indecent photographs of children, 4 counts of distributing indecent photographs of a child, possession of prohibited images of a child, possession of an extreme pornographic image. It goes on. The jury found that Sutton and Ireland were not guilty of the conspiracy offences with which they had also been charged, including 3 counts of arranging a child sexual offence, 5 counts of conspiracy to sexually assault a child. They are disgusting, These people are disgusting. And Stephen Ireland once tweeted me and told me, well, a number of things, including calling me a paranoid busybody for having an issue with drag queen story time. I made a report about drag queen story time. I called it child grooming in plain sight. He tweeted me. He said I was a paranoid busybody and a bigot. Well, actually, it turns out you're a child rapist. We weren't ever paranoid. Our gut instincts had just kicked in quite correctly. Quite correctly. These people hijacked LGB. Yes, they did. Absolutely. Anything beyond the B is questionable and problematic, right? They'll love prison, soldier. Oh, yes, they will. Which kind of leads us rather neatly into our first guest today. Let's bring them in. Here they are. It's Nan and Elijah. Elijah? How am I pronouncing that? Elijah?
Eliza.
Eliza! Good morning.
Elijah is really cool, though. I like that.
It's fabulous. I see there'll be a problem with communication today. Of course, they've been with us before. They're from Whom by Fire, and they've had a cancellation to do with Pride. Well, there's a shocker there. Let me just have a look at this. We are sorry to announce that we have been pulled from playing at the Gladstone Arms this Sunday. We received an email from the promoter that due to some difficult comments made online about Southend Pride on one of our personal pages, we are no longer welcome to perform at the Gladstone Arms now or in the future. How bad are you people?
Really bad.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous. Yeah.
This is just so ridiculous. Tell us a little bit about it.
So we were due to be performing at the Gladstone Arms on Sunday, this Sunday coming, and we received an email a couple of days ago just telling us that we're not welcome in that venue for this coming event or at any point in the future.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we've got to be careful on here because you know what YouTube's like about gender and C19 and all of that. But I'm assuming you didn't say anything too outrageous. You're just sticking up against the gender woohoo, aren't you?
Yeah. They did actually specifically say it was due to comments made about Southend Pride. I've raised some concerns in the past and very recently. Recently, there was a Southend Winter Pride held at a local church called St Mark's, and there was some really dodgy things going on there from what I could see. They obviously had the drag story time for children. I mean, that goes without saying these days, but one of the things that troubled me was a quiz that they were handing out to young children in the kids' corner. And some of the questions in that quiz were really, I thought it added up to like grooming really. And they were like multiple choice answers, like asking, young kids who they're attracted to, saying that they could identify as whatever they want, that sort of thing.
Yeah, blurring the lines, isn't it? We've seen it. We've seen it constantly, and obviously you just heard that news story. But you're not a hateful pair. Let's play a little bit of your music so people get an idea of who you really are. Okay, let's do this.
You look odd, but I like you that way. If I could see your face again, I know that love will carry me home. If you knew everything I'm not, I'm on a road and I've changed. I'm on a road and I've changed. I'm on a road and I've changed.
So let me get this straight. Love will carry you home. I'm on a road and I have checked. You sound completely hateful, horrible bigots.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you people?
Yeah, and in between songs as well, we're like really going for it, throwing down all the hate. Yeah.
And just so the viewers are aware, that's actually a clip from the same venue that we've been cancelled from.
Yeah.
So they know you. They have prior experience with you. Presumably you didn't have a falling out. You got on really well with them on the day. They have just folded to the whole cancel culture, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
The good news is not everybody folds though, right? Because what happened to replace this?
So we've been offered the gig at the absolutely wonderful Hope Sussex. And Matt Letizia, who is a footballing legend, is talking there, along with some other wonderful speakers. And we've been asked to perform as special guests on the day. So as far as we're concerned, we've had a bit of a step up in gigs. So we're quite excited about that.
This is what happens though, isn't it? That a lot of the time this has that kind of Streisand effect, and that is the more they try to suppress us and keep us down. I don't know about you, but it has this impact on me. When people try and silence me, I just get louder, right? And it does have that impact. Does it have the same impact on you?
Yeah, definitely. I feel when it first kicks off, I very much go into myself and I start feeling very sort of down and sad. And then I think, no, I'm going to show you that we're not a hateful band, and we're going to carry on believing what we believe, saying what we want to say, because that's freedom, and still delivering and performing our music, because that's the most important thing.
Without naming any individuals, do you know where this complaint emanated from?
Well, we had one member of the Southend Pride Committee comment on our on the statement we put out, and she, possibly they, them, I'm not sure, said that nobody cared about us from Southend Pride. We're completely irrelevant. But she took the time to vent her anger at us. So we think it's probably her that's putting in quite a lot of complaints, but there could be several people. I don't know.
Yeah. You're going to have a fantastic time at Hope Sussex. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that not only is this a wonderful full moon, which I absolutely love, full moon weekend, and it's, you know, a lot of stuff is coming to fruition. And the thing is, we're also getting rid of the stuff that we no longer need. So you no longer need the Gladstone Arms, right? Where is the Gladstone Arms? Tell us where they are.
Oh, no.
Central London.
London, yeah.
Where?
I don't know. I can't think where it was now. Is it near Oh, blimey.
It's not.
I don't know. Can't remember.
It's not northwest near Camden, is it?
I think it may be that neck of the woods.
Right. Well, I'm going to check it out. I will definitely check it out, because I will make sure to tell any of my friends who are gigging to steer well clear of them, because I would suggest that they're the bigots, actually, who are cancelling free speech. Go on, Dan.
It's probably worth noting that it wasn't actually the Gladstone that cancelled us. It was the promoter and the promoter is called Bark.
Okay, well, I will check that out. Actually, what I'll do is I'll send them this clip so they can see that rather than stifle and silence you, they just made you all that much louder. Before you leave us today, what would you like to tell everybody?
Well, you can check out our music if you'd like to. We're on Bandcamp, Spotify, and all of the social media platforms. We're going to be gigging a lot this year, so if you'd like to support us, please come to a gig, buy a record if you like our music.
We've got a fair amount of lesbians and gays in our comments, actually commenting literally now, who have absolutely no problem with you whatsoever. In fact, they have a great deal more problem with what's going on at Pride, because these organisers have put actually lesbian, gay and bisexual rights back. That's what they've done. And you're not the problem. You are absolutely not the problem. As we can hear from your wonderful music, by the way, I love that song. Is it available to download?
It's actually going to be on our next album.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. Tell me what inspired it.
I think it's a song really about redemption, I suppose, and the sort of changes you go through to get to like where you are today. It's not about transitioning, by the way.
Well, That's really good to hear. By the way, how impressive is that wall behind you? Are those all your guitars?
They're a collection of mine and my husband's. Yeah.
Wow,
And the cat.
absolutely love
We've
it.
got a cat there as well.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Lovely to have you with us. Have a brilliant
Thank
day
you, Sonia.
this weekend. You're absolute stars. Do not let the bastards get you down. And clearly you're not. Everybody, whom by fire, Dan and Elijah. Why am I not able to pronounce that this morning? I have no idea. Lovely to see you both. Take good care of yourself.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do you know, the thing is, they got guts. I love that. What's the cat called? Says Jackie. I have no idea, Jack. Music, food for the soul. Indeed, indeed, indeed. Now, there's a couple of things I want to talk about before I bring in my first guest, kids. One of them is, on Wednesday, we were joined by Size X, the cousin of Mark Duggan. Mark Duggan, of course, was shot by the Metropolitan Police. It was ruled a lawful killing. But it led to the British riots of 2011. And the image that was repeatedly shown by media did not give the full picture. And X was talking about that, but he sent it to me. So first of all, let me show you what the media. This was actually in the Mirror, and you can't actually see the headline, but it's about how Mark Duggan was involved in a hitman, and they very carefully doctored this picture. You want to know why? I'll show you. Because Mark Duggan was holding a plaque for his child who had died, and he's in a graveyard. But they didn't want to show you that image of him. And so they doctored it to make him look like a gangster, right? That's what they did. It's absolutely sickening what they've done. Oh, yes, Jan. That's what they did. Check it out. Look at that. He's holding the plaque for his dead child. But they reduced that image so you would believe that this man was probably holding a gun or something else. That is exactly what they do, Mikey. And both X and I thought it was really important to actually show our viewers the true image, right? That this image was repeatedly shown by media, did not give the full picture. They used the top half of this image because it looked gangster enough with his face tattoo. But what they missed, I think there is a face tattoo there. He's got something anyway. But what they missed out was shocking. The original picture, as X said on Wednesday, was taken when one of Mark's children had died and he was holding a heart plaque. Tell me, have you ever seen the full picture of Mark Duggan? Media scum are liars. Yes, Lenticular Cloud. Thanks to Size X for showing us this. This is so important. What we do around here, the reason that I do what I do is because I absolutely hate media lies. I hate media manipulation. The aim is always to get you to emotionally react to something, and they did it with Mark Duggan. Cavan said, what did the media get out of lying so much? Well, obviously, it's so much easier, isn't it, to push through certain agendas if they've demonized people. London lady, typical BS. This man was grieving his child, and they used it to make him out to be a gangster. Absolutely shocking and disgusting stuff. Disgusting stuff. And thank you to X for sending that to me. Right, what do I want to do before we are joined by our next guest? Hold on a second. I'd like to play you this. This is journalist and commentator Anthony Webber. And Anthony is fed up with the government wasting your money on their warmongering while the UK is desperately short of money. Anthony said, please, can you listen to this?
Hello, my name's Anthony Webber, and I've been involved with several successful Truth and Freedom parliamentary petitions. Today I'm asking you to support a very important new petition on the subject of Ukraine and Russia. This is for a referendum to withdraw the UK from all treaties with Ukraine and to stop them giving them billions of our money. We know that we are having tax rises, spending cuts, and higher costs of energy and living, all mainly caused by these policies. We also want to end this aid because by doing so we're going to end the slaughter, which is needless, which has been going on for far too long. So please put the UK's interests first and support this petition. Take you 30 seconds of your time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Now, I understand Some of our commenters, like me, very cynical about petitions, because what do they do, right? What do they do? But we are all sick and tired, aren't we, of having our money wasted and everything. And Anthony really does go for it with these petitions. He'll be joining us next Friday for a news review. And if you want or don't want, either way, the link is in the description below, right? Greg said, I'm afraid these petitions are just a PR exercise. No good has ever come out of any of them. They're just like a release valve. I think one of the things that's useful with petitions is it makes people think that something is being done. There is one thing that I can say about petitions is they can raise awareness to an issue. Right. I've never actually seen anything really change. I mean, everybody was out on the streets, obviously to do with Iraq, and nothing changed there. So I've never really seen any major changes, but they can raise awareness to injustices. So something has to be said for that. Right. What LM Half Pint said they've renamed a road in my town called Zelensky Avenue. Stop that. You're pulling my chain, as the Americans say. How do we rid it from the country when they impose it all on everyone? That's outrageous. Awareness matters, Randy. It does. It really does. Okay, right. Signed hundreds of these petitions, says Martin, over the last 4 or 5 years. It just legitimizes the protest, in my opinion. Fair play to the chap, though. Exactly. I said, you know what? If Anthony, if he wants to record 1 minute to make an appeal to you guys, forgive me for misgendering you, then he's very welcome to. He's very welcome to. Right. And just before we bring in our next guest, I want to play you this. This is absolutely, truly wonderful. This friends of the show, Leslie and Bev. We go places, people. We certainly do. These are twins. And they sent us this video from their balloon ride in Marrakesh on Christmas Day morning. So they're about to do the balloon ride, and Leslie is mouthing our theme tune. Good morning, Grand Rising. Check it out, everybody. It's quite loud when you hear it.
And we take wind speed and wind direction. Okay? For example, if we have wind to
There she is. God love her. Good morning, Grand Rising, as she's about to go up in the skies of Marrakesh. I absolutely love that. I love it. And Markson said, I bet Zelensky Avenue has a high street. High. Emphasis on the high. Right. Let's bring in our next guest. He's very interesting character, extremely interesting character. Wee bit controversial, which we kind of like around here, frankly. Let us bring him in. And the first thing I'm going to do is absolutely bastardized how to pronounce his name. Is it Neil or Niall?
Hello, Sonia. It's Neil. It's the Scottish Gaelic spelling rather than the Irish mispronunciation of it.
Lovely to have you with us, Neil. Dr. Niall McCrae, author, researcher, former senior mental health lecturer, man who puts his head above the parapet and is prepared to take the consequences of it. I think the first time that you came to my attention was when you were campaigning for Brexit, and there was this kind of issue that was going on with Crazy Femi, and you were all over the mainstream media and they demonized you. Does that ring any bells, Neil?
Well, I worked in a university for many years, and I was at the university when I was having a bit of a verbal joust with Femi Olewole outside a Brexit Party rally. Look, anyone supporting Brexit in a university environment was seen as beyond the pale.
Terrible.
It was not an acceptable opinion, and I always remember the day after the vote. It was on a Thursday, I think, wasn't it? And anyway, the next day that the university was open, I went into the library at King's College London, and there was a big sign up that the staff had written in marker pen, saying that international students are welcome here, and it was a message that was not directly stating that Brexit was a racist outrage against anyone from abroad, but it was implying that as close as they could to making it blunt.
how horribly captured our places of education have become. But that must have been quite, I don't know, was it isolating for you at that period of time? Because it can be.
Well, not quite as much as you'd think, because we tend to make sweeping statements. We're all guilty of this. We tend to think that everyone in a university setting is woke or left wing or whatever. And in fact, it's not really like that.
Right.
The problem is more that people don't speak up. You have this conformity culture where you can have lecturers and students as well who don't actually believe in the progressive, green, woke dogma, but they're scared to say anything about it. I had many conversations with lecturers and professors at King's who really were against the EU and would have voted for Brexit, but they would only have said it in whispers to me. They certainly wouldn't have broadcast that.
And that's what separates you. Exactly. That's what separates you, is you are prepared to stand up and be counted. And we need more like you, because I think we're all sick and tired, aren't we? I mean, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, but I'm absolutely sick and tired of those private messages that say, I really support what you're saying about A, B, or C, but I can't say it because my job and blah, blah. But we all have to keep a roof over our head. And I think these are moral dilemmas. And it would appear that you're very much on the right side of history, because you're not afraid to put your head above the parapet. So let's look at some of the articles that you've written, which are in their own way quite controversial, frankly. I think your most recent one is this week, and it's about St Thomas's Hospital. St Thomas's Hospital is a legendary hospital. Why are you having a go at St Thomas's?
St Thomas's is a famous old London hospital. It's perhaps the most visible hospital in the UK, because it occupies that prestigious place on the River Thames opposite the Houses of Parliament. And because of that prominence, St Thomas's is often used for the politicized agenda of the NHS. And in that article, I refer to the TikTok dancers during COVID, and the recent, just last week, there was a sort of furor about Guy's and St Thomas's Trust going against the latest sort of recommendations of Wes Streeting, the health minister, that trans staff should not be using the opposite gender's toilets and changing rooms.
Right.
So trans women should not be in the female changing rooms. But Guy's and St Thomas's has said that, yes, they absolutely have a right to use the changing room of their choice, and making it clear that anyone who opposes that will be in disciplinary trouble. And then the other thing about St Thomas's, the first time I became aware, I used to do lectures there actually when I was at King's, was this huge statue of Mary Seacole. And I don't know if anyone, your audience has seen it, but it's a massive structure, and the figure is kind of gazing across the river at the Houses of Parliament. And I raised this with Nadine Dorries, who was a junior health minister at the time, and she invited me to tea over at the Houses of Parliament, and she was going to raise it because this was really absurd and just so wrong on so many levels. Seacole has been celebrated as a Black British nurse who sort of somehow founded the profession of nursing. Well, Seacole wasn't Black, she wasn't British, and she wasn't a nurse. The real nurse, the real founder of nursing and founder of St Thomas's Hospital even, was Florence Nightingale. And I invited Lynn MacDonald, who's a great scholar of Florence Nightingale and a critic of this artificial kind of this mythology about Mary Seacole. I invited her to come do a guest talk at King's College London, and I was at the Florence Nightingale Faculty of Nursing and
That is the thing, and I want to just interject here because I think it's really important. Is that this piece is not actually about you sort of drubbing down Mary Seacole, not at all. You're acknowledging her and what she actually did, but what you're saying is that the powers that be, the agenda, have tried to turn her into something that she wasn't, that she herself didn't recognize herself to be, and actually replace Florence Nightingale at the Florence Nightingale School of Nursing. That is absolutely the DEI policy, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it just shows how far this woke ideology goes, and there's no end to it. You know, people think, oh, surely surely they can't go any further than this. No, it keeps going, because woke is a revolutionary movement. It's based on cultural Marxism, which was the Frankfurt School in the 1920s. It's an ongoing revolution against all traditions and norms of society, and it will keep going. And it's like George Orwell put it, it's forcing people to believe that 2 + 2 = 5.
The problem is somebody who's educated is now being portrayed as somebody who is bigoted, automatically bigoted for stating facts. And that is a problem in our world. It's almost like we want to accept lies in order just to people please and to fit in. But you're not like that, not at all. One of my favorite pieces, recent pieces that you've written, is 10 Ways to Show You're an Educated Idiot. I mean, do you write your own headlines?
Often I do. Yeah. Sometimes my headings are a little bit too spicy, and they're changed a little bit, or they're made more appealing by the editors of whichever website I'm writing for. But yes, I do spend a bit of time working out. The headline is always the thing that I write first, and then the article sort of flows from there.
Would you consider yourself a bigot or a racist or any of those things, the charges that have been leveled at you?
Well, I just believe that I'm mostly just a common sense thinker. I mean, I do engage in critical thinking, and that's why I was I worked in academia for much of my career. I question things, and that is the true scientific attitude, is doubt. You don't just accept things as they are. And something that I've been writing about more recently, Sonia, is that everyone's heard of this thing called cancel culture. Mm. And you got in touch with me because I'd written a piece about how the world famous DJ, Danny Rampling, had been cancelled because he'd said some politically incorrect things. What I think is much more dangerous to society is not this sort of euphemistic cancel culture. I mean, I say euphemistic because actually cancelling someone sounds quite minimal, considering what actually happens. Right. They destroy people's livelihood. So Danny Rampling was at risk of not only having a particular gig cancelled, but once you're targeted, they will destroy you. They will try and stop any venues from hosting an event with you. So it's much more than just cancelling. But the point I wanted to make is that cancel culture only tells you a little bit about what's actually happening in society. The term we ought to be using is conformity culture.
Love it.
Because that is much more pervasive. And you and I were just talking some moments ago about how, lecturers at King's would have their real views that they would sort of talk to me about in private, but they won't say it in public. And that is a problem, isn't it, Sonia? It's like only a few of us are, have the courage of our convictions to speak out. Society polices itself. That's what the powers that be have managed to do.
Right. That piece that you wrote about Danny Rampling, I know Danny Rampling from my music journalism days. I obviously huge DJ. And I think part of the problem that he was experiencing was that he'd played at the Art Conference, which was the other week, Jordan Peterson Conference. And this website had said it's not the first time that the DJ and Shoom founder has expressed fringe political views. He's a vocal opponent of the COVID-19 vaccine, described net zero carbon emission targets as a scam and implied that the World Economic Forum Great Reset Initiative is an attempt at creating a tyrannical world government. Well, I agree with every single one of those sentiments. And that is the problem, is that you go back to talking common sense, right? You dare to do that. Suddenly you are ostracized and alienated from society. And they went for him. And what I found most reprehensible about that piece was the involvement of Mixmag. Now, Mixmag used to be, Danny Rampling was like king of the dance scene, right? Mixmag used to, have him in the cover in the magazine a lot. And what they ended up doing was they gave an interview to the opponents, Fossil Free London, and they all gloated at Danny Rampling. It was pathetic. It is pathetic. These are cowards, Neil. These are cowards. They make me sick. Go on.
What do you think's going on there, Sonia? Because obviously you know the media scene a lot more than I do. How is it that a magazine devoted to DJing and dance music could write an article where they are giving directly quoting from and almost like promoting the view of these activist groups, the Fossil Free London and Stand Up to Racism? And not saying a word about how, one of the most revered of their number has been attacked. So how does it get to the point where media are going against their own sort of thing that they're supposed to be representing?
I don't know who owns Mixmag these days, but that may give us a clue about what is going on in the background, because obviously oftentimes there are conflicts of interest that are taking place, but I wouldn't trust any of these now. And I've written for Mixmag in the past when I was a music journalist, and it wasn't anything like this. I was actually horrified reading your articles. I just thought, this is the pulp they're pushing at young people now. Then it is ideological capture. That's what's taken place for the most part. And anybody who doesn't fit into that is to be ostracized and tarred and feathered. And that's what they did with Danny Rampling. And that's what's happened to you too, Neil. And that is the reality. So I suppose, when you meet up with somebody, I think Dan is your friend anyway, but when you come together with somebody who's been through a similar experience, it must be quite reassuring, at least, because as you say, cancel culture, the expression minimizes what actually takes place. It can be devastating on one's life, can't it?
Yes. And, in the Cultural Revolution in China, you had these, wild-eyed revolutionaries who were doing like struggle sessions and attacking their school teachers and so on. And I reckon what actually happened in China was that it was only a minority that were really, sort of enacting this awful ideological crusade, and most people were just going along with it and keeping their heads down. And when I was at King's College London, I didn't find that most students are very political at all. I didn't find that most students are very ideological. I think most of them are just trying to get through the system, trying to navigate without, trying to deal with all the changing sort of woke kind of expectations, such as pronouns and that sort of thing. And I wrote this book, Moralitis, a cultural virus, back
what
in
title.
Well, it was funny because it came out. My colleague and I, Robert Tolles, we've been writing it for about 3 years, and when it came out, when we finished it in 2020, we had to delay the publication of it because a book coming out in early 2020 with the term virus in the title, a cultural virus. When you think of the hysteria about COVID-19 in sort of February, March 2020. So we delayed it for a few months. But an important point that we made in that book about this thing we called moralitis, sort of like a mind virus, is that most people are just carriers of the virus. And there's a minority who are contagious, the ones that really go about spreading and forcing these ideas on people, the kind of person that would become the head of a student union, for example, or go on and become a sort of woke dictator in some profession or institution somewhere. But most people are just carriers. but they still have carriers, even though they don't sort of actively try and enforce ideas on people. They still have a very, very profound effect on society, because by their sheer number, and this is, I think, what Tony Blair wanted to do when he wanted at least 50% of people to go to university, because those people would be indoctrinated. They wouldn't become ideological agitators, but they would just do the thing that was needed by the powers that be, which is to police others and to get this phrase, "you can't say that," into common parlance. I mean, you and I are old enough, Sonia, to remember that we used to say, "It's a free country, isn't it?" Do you remember that? We used to say that.
Yeah, I do remember that, and I laugh at that now. The idea that I even thought that, frankly.
Yeah. So they've got this sort of policing done by this larger number of the majority of younger people who are just carriers of the virus. That they don't really deep down believe in all the absurdities, but they know that it has to be, things have to be said or done or expressed. Certain virtues have to be signaled if you want to get anywhere. And by their sheer number, the carriers make conformity culture prevail.
And that is the problem. And it's so easy for people to kind of bow to, because it is frightening, you know, the idea of losing your livelihood, your reputation, your career, all of those things. But there are people like us who say, well, tough, let, you know, kind of like let the chips fall where they may. I certainly have. I've been through all manner of, I've lost jobs and all manner of cancellation, and none of it will change how I am, because I have to face myself every day. I have to face my daughter every day, my family, my loved ones. And there's a couple of people, actually, I think I've only seen one, jumping up and down in the comments. And again, we absolutely welcome free speech around here. But you are being called a racist, I'm sure not for the first time in your life, by one person. And but again, we allow for freedom of speech, because it's important, isn't it, Neil, in a so-called democracy?
Yeah, freedom of speech is vital to a civic democracy. And I think what you were talking about a few moments ago, Sonia, is integrity. And I think, sadly, that's something that's lacking. We discovered with COVID-19 just how small a proportion of society has got proper sort of critical thinking abilities. We discovered that. But I think what's also discovered is how an even smaller number have got integrity, because you've got some critical thinkers who know what's going on is wrong, but they still carry on what they're doing. And, you know, we can understand that to an extent, because people have to pay their bills, you know, mortgages, and, you know, who wants to be thrown on the scrap heap from their job. You know, you can understand it to a bit. You can excuse it to some extent, but I think happily, and for the benefit of humankind, there are some of us who are prepared to not to stay in our jobs or any other positions in society because of the demands of saying something that we don't believe in. You know, we want to speak our minds. We want to say what's true. We want to call out the climate hoax, the COVID hoax, and the trans nonsense. We want to call it out because we've got integrity, and we're surrounded by people who agree with us, but will not take that step.
And I think it's important. I don't want to live in a society where people are cowed into silence for fear of being called one ist or another. So what? There's worse things, right? There's worse things at sea than to be called whatever, a bigot or whatever. And as I said actually at the top of the show, that I was actually called a bigot by a man who's just been convicted of being a child rapist. So, you know, sometimes, you know, it's quite interesting, isn't it, who attacks us, I find. But you did talk about, you started to talk about the green dogma there. You've also written a book about that. You literally, what did you do? Did you wake up with like a hand grenade and just say, right, I am literally just going to just attack all the things that is going to get them all up in arms? But they're all interconnected, aren't they? All these things that you're talking about.
Yeah, they are. So I believe that there are two sides of a coin here, as a sort of dual onslaught on Western society, and that is green and woke. And woke is about divide and rule. That's the purpose of it. Absolutely. And it's identity politics used to create as many wedges in society as possible, and really to tear society apart. And like I said earlier, this is based on the sort of cultural Marxist ideology going back to the 1920s. Now, the people in power are not necessarily Marxists. Probably very few of them are. But cultural Marxism has proved to be an extremely effective tool for them in weakening society. If the powers that be want to change everything, as we know they do, they want to do their great reset, then they need to dismantle and demoralize existing society to get there. And so woke ideology is the way to do that. The green is different, but it's done by the same people. It's being run by the same powers that be. Green is really an extension of eugenics, which was a movement that can be traced back to Charles Darwin and Sir Francis Galton in the late 19th century. Got a bad name in the Second World War with the Nazis, but prior to that, in the early 20th century, it was a huge thing. And all the intelligentsia were in favor of eugenics. So after the Second World War, 1947, Julian Huxley, brother of Aldous, who wrote Brave New World, he was appointed as director of the United Nations Science Agency, UNESCO. And he basically said in his opening speech, eugenics is dead, long live eugenics. And what transpired sort of over the 1950s and 1960s was, although of course we didn't really realize it at the time, was that eugenics was being rebranded in the color green. And jumping to 1968, that was what I call in my book, Green in Tooth and Claw, I call it Anno Domini. 1968 was when Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb, came out, which said that there was a drastic need to reduce the population on Earth. And secondly, the Club of Rome was founded by the Rockefellers in that year, and the Club of Rome has been running the United Nations ever since. And so what we now have is the United Nations run by people who are basically eugenicists. Right. They have such a dark, dystopian, misanthropic view of the world, and really the only people that should be allowed to inhabit this planet are the chosen few, and anyone that's allowed to live below them will be on conditions that of enslavement, impoverishment, and they're going to bring in all kinds of limits to human lives. I mean, assisted dying is a euphemism again for something which is very dark. It's about the euthanasia, dystopian ideas of euthanasia.
Useless eaters, right? Kind of like the whole useless eaters thing all over again.
Logan's Run, and Logan's Run would actually be quite generous, wasn't it? Logan's Run, I think people are allowed to live until their mid-30s or something like that.
It's a control system. Everything that you've just talked about is a control system. And I think that it's really important for you to be able to say your truth and speak it loudly, because we're not allowed to. And that is what has been the problem for the last few years. And round here, I really appreciate people speaking up. And I don't even have to agree with them in order for them to, because I think what's been missing in media is that everything is so angled and structured to a certain way, so captured, whereas nobody's captured you on here. right? Literally, no, you're literally allowed to say within the confines of YouTube, which in itself is captured. But for the most part, we are able to express ourselves, and this has to be the way forward. Because if I push your ideas underground, I'm not going to find out what there is there that perhaps me and you need to work on together in order to be able to improve our way forward, right?
Yeah.
Pushing people underground never works, does it, Neil?
Yeah, and it probably still seems a bit far-fetched to maybe even your audience, Sonia, that the green agenda is about depopulating the earth and creating the people who are running the show are not about saving the planet. They're about saving the planet for themselves. And in today's news, Ed Miliband, our energy and net zero minister, is off to China to lecture them about decarbonisation. And many people are making the comments about hypocrisy. It's a comment often people make, about these world leaders and, who are quite happy to fly around in jet fuel belching aircraft while they're lecturing us about, smart meters and keeping our heating turned down and that sort of thing. Well, if you believe that what Ed Miliband is doing is hypocrisy, so he could, have this meeting with the Chinese administration by Zoom, couldn't he? And that would save that.
Exactly.
Him taking that fight. But this is a trap, because if you believe that this is hypocrisy, that Ed Miliband could be saving on carbon by not flying to China, then you've been sucked into their territory that they want you to be on. You've been sucked into believing that there's something genuine about this argument that there's too much carbon dioxide. So it's not really hypocrisy. Ed Miliband knows, I believe, he knows that the climate crisis is a scam. I mean, he's been working with George Soros for decades.
And the Rousings have invested in what he's doing. Obviously, they're Tetra Pak heiress, and they're very much into the whole green agenda. And as you and I know, Neil, that a lot of the time when these people are investing, they're also getting something out, right? There's no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that's been in the news this week is about what you might call a ZIL lane, a big, broad roadway that's being created through the forest for a climate summit that's coming up in Brazil. And again, people on our side are shouting hypocrisy, but it's not really hypocrisy. The people in charge know that there's no climate emergency. They know there's no global boiling. They know that there's nothing inherently dangerous about carbon dioxide. It's plant food, right? They know that.
Exactly.
So if all our arguments,
keep this on my desk, but you can see it. There you go. But yes,
if we get sucked into accusing these people of hypocrisy, that suggests that we're accepting that there really is something bad and something threatening to our ecosystem in sort of carbon dioxide. It's completely false. This net zero thing is about restricting people's lives, control, as you put it, Sonia. It's about developing a technocracy. Every bit of energy use is being recorded. That's why you have smart meters. But actually, as I've got on the front cover of my book, Green in Tooth and Claw, I've got myself bearing a placard saying, "You are the carbon they want to reduce."
exactly that. Exactly that. Thank you for joining us this morning, coming at us with all barrels. Dr. Niall McCrae, everybody. Good to have you with us. Take good care of yourself, Neil. Hope to speak to you soon. Come back and join us. I love to see our live comments up in arms at this time in the morning. And no, not all. But I think healthy debate is important. And I think opposite. I think people being able to say, as I say, what they think is also important. And thank you for doing that this morning, everybody. Dr. Niall McCrae. Take good care of yourself. Neil.
Thanks, Sonia. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, I'm going to address. There's one commenter who's kicking off, guys. Doc, you had the comments go wild. Absolutely. And I think it was the Mary Sokol comment that actually, I only saw one person really kicking off. And Sean said, thanks, Neil. Spot on. Jenny said, Dr. Neil speaks truth. And I love CO2, says Sally. Me too. Look, I love CO2. I think that was given to me by Dr. Tess Laurie, this badge, by the way. Difference of opinion is really important. If we don't allow it, then we're just going to become like legacy media, like mainstream media. And he's a well-researched individual. And I didn't have a problem really pretty much with anything that he said. And by the way, his comments about Mary Sokol, if you actually read the article, he says lots of great things about her. But why did they put a statue of Mary Sokol outside a hospital that's called the Florence Nightingale? That was his point. And I think it's a fair point. Boaty McBoatface said, I actually enjoyed listening to Dr. Neil. Being able to speak out is so important. It's so important. We should work on what we all agree on. That will go nowhere around here, right? That will go nowhere around here. I do. I'm an advocate for free speech as much as I humanly can be. Not abuse, not outright lies and defamation, not anything like that. But we need to be able to express ourselves. That's what we need to do. Let's bring in our next guest. Complete change of tone, right? Everybody calm down, okay? Everybody calm down. And relax. Let's relax and let's do something completely different. Here she is. Hello, Red Willow. How are you, Red?
Hiya, I'm very well, Sonia. I'm a little bit nervous, I have to admit.
Oh, you don't need to be nervous. I'm holding your hand all the way through this. You are a body wisdom coach. We've already talked. And as we talk and as we talk more, you are going to give two of our viewers a chance to access a 6-week course to change their lives for free because you're a star. But let's talk about you. Let's definitely talk about you. You are an author. You're a coach. You're a bit of a seer in your own right, really. You're an ex-chef. And you said, I'm attempting to transition into my purpose as a holistic coach and share all that I have learned so far about holistic health and natural wellness. So you were a chef. Why are you no longer a chef? Because I've seen some of your recipes from a year of veggie adventures, and I'm telling you, you could be running a top of the range venue right now. Why are you no longer a chef?
That's funny you should ask that, because through the years, so many people have said to me, why don't you open a restaurant? You should open a restaurant. But I don't, because I love cooking. I don't love management or admin or accounts or stock taking. So cooking has been a passion of mine, weirdly, because I didn't eat anything when I was a kid. I wasn't very into that, so I had no appetite for food. I basically lived on cheese sandwiches and plain chicken, so it was quite a surprise to me when I became a chef. But as I went through many jobs in hospitality and started learning more, started eating more, it was really good for me because I started tasting more food and started appreciating it more. And it just went on like that, really. And it was very good fun. However, having learned a lot about food and worked in the industry for quite some time, front and back of house, it was just time to get out. I think it's a very difficult industry to be in long term. And people kind of struggle. There's another program I'm doing to do with that. Maybe I can come later in the year and we'll discuss that more. So that's about helping hospitality staff.
For sure. We're making people hungry, by the way. These are all your dishes, aren't they? This is from a year of veggie adventures. I'm vegetarian. This looks scrumptious. Like, this is genius. The thing is that cooking is also a form of expression, right?
Yeah.
And it's creative. This is incredible stuff that you've done here. What is the inspiration behind this? This is so different.
The inspiration were all my friends, really, because for some reason vegetarians just show up in my life. I'm not vegetarian myself. I eat mindfully, really, is the best way to describe, which we'll talk about shortly. But yeah, vegetarians just kept showing up, and I felt really bad for them, because when I started cooking, it was back in the 90s, and you know, you go out with your friends and there's never anything for them to eat. It's just mushroom risotto, vegetable penne, and that went on for years. I mean, I appreciate that sort of changing a little bit now, but then, you know, obviously when you live with vegetarians and you're a chef, it's kind of inevitable that you end up sort of being the cook and cooking some things. And I got really interested in the style of food for the variety. And I thought, this is great, because vegetables just get ignored so often. You know, we're just putting a piece of meat on the plate or a piece of fish and then putting something next to it as a bit of a token gesture, really. But there's so many vegetables and grains and so many places you can go with it. And I find it a really interesting way to cook, really. So that's why I focused on vegetarian.
Well, we love this. And one of the reasons I want to start off with this is I want to show people your background, what your capabilities are, so they can see what they are likely to get out of this course. So talk to us about this course that you have planned, which kicks off on Monday, I believe St. Patrick's Day. Interesting timing, although probably wasn't organized for that. But full moon weekend, this is the moment when you kind of bring together all your new projects and launch them. And that's what you're about to do. Tell us about this course.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's the culmination of all my life's work, because apart from being a chef for many years and working in hospitality, I've also always had this fascination ever since I was a teenager with anything that could be described as alternative or holistic or natural wellness. So I've done all kinds of training. I've spent thousands learning all kinds of different ways that we can look after ourselves without having to crash out, really. So it's about maintaining health and keeping on a level and bringing yourself back from the brink. So I can define body wisdom as having the knowledge and the power to consciously choose how to nourish your body at any given time. So there's quite a lot in there. So it could be food, but not necessarily.
It's a holistic approach. And that is often what's missing, isn't it? Is certainly within our NHS, is they'll say, okay, your head is hurting, it must be something in the head. But they don't tie it all together, do they? And I think what you're doing with your body wisdom course, because, and again, I wanted people to show your grounding in your culinary skills and your abilities as a chef, because food is so important. Like, how do we still manage to underestimate the importance of what we're putting into us as well as on our skin? We ignore it still, don't we?
Yeah, I think that over the years, we've been subject to, have tried to be polite about it, manipulation, marketing tactics, and outdated science that doesn't really catch up. You know, it takes quite a long time for the populace to catch up with any research, and quite often, as we know, the research isn't very well advertised, shall I say. So there's been a lot of that, and I just think people are really, really confused. And going back to your point about how we don't know or don't think about what's going in is important, yeah, that hasn't been highlighted. So with body wisdom, it's not so much just about what you eat either, because you notice in my definition there, I was talking about nourishment rather than nutrition. Yeah. So a big part of it is mindful eating. It's about how you eat. So it can be that your body doesn't mind eating donuts and crisps, but maybe it's the fact that you're eating them really fast and unconsciously that's causing stress chemicals, which is causing you to put on the weight. Not talking about you, Sonia, you're obviously very slim, but it's an issue that people
I haven't always been a lot. And I've actually had food disorders. I was bulimic for years, from my teenage years into my 20s. I had so many hang-ups. I was actually obese. I used to be obese, Red, and it wasn't necessarily that I ate a lot of food, but I just ate badly and at the wrong times. And like in my 20s, I was so dangerous to myself. They used to call me the 3 C's, which was coffee, Coke, and Coke as in the drink, and cigarettes. That was my diet, essentially. So it's taken me a long time to get to where you are, but you do look healthy. Have you always been healthy?
No, I haven't. And again, that's partially the reason I've got to the point where I have, because I've never been especially unwell. However, I've always had a trouble with my digestion, and it took me quite a long time to figure it all out. So this is exactly the kind of people that Body Wisdom is for. People who are just a little bit like, well, it's not quite a thing, but I'm not comfortable. I'm just struggling a bit. You know, things like IBS, digestive problems, are so prevalent, and they could be resolved by just a little bit of knowledge of eating timing, eating speed, going with the rhythm and the natural cycles of nature a bit more. And, you know, you go to the doctor and they're just sort of like, well, I can't do anything. That's IBS. So that's a really good example of somebody who would benefit from Body Wisdom. But all kinds of other things like low energy, low mood, fatigue, poor skin, poor hair, all of those things can be very easily resolved. Absolutely. So yeah, I've been through that journey. I've figured it out myself. So there we are.
You look lovely. Your skin is glowing. Your hair looks in really good condition. You look slim and well taken care of. You're a good advertisement for the Body Wisdom course. So tell us what we would get on the Body Wisdom course. It starts on Monday, as we know, 6 weeks to empowered health. How do we go about it? We log on online, do we?
Yes. So I've got resources page. It's already up online. So on there's bonus presentations and handouts. I'll have book recommendations, notes about the sessions, and then it will be 6 sessions of 90 minutes each on Monday evenings at 7:30. So they'll be on Zoom, and I'll send you over the Zoom link. And then I've got 3 other sessions. They're social sessions, so they're more for sharing. Everybody that's on the course, we're only having a small group the first time, so everybody can talk to each other, share their experiences, get some inspiration, motivation. And also at that point, you've got the chance to come and bother me about cooking tips, techniques. What do I do with a moolie, for goodness sake? You know, how do I make this thing taste nice? I want to try eating that, but I don't know how to introduce it. So that's a really good chance to just like hassle me for loads of cooking tips and stuff.
It's exciting. It's like a new beginning for you. What are you expecting from it?
I'm expecting to be excited and fulfilled and satisfied. Yeah, like I said, it feels like the culmination of my life's work so far. I've pulled everything into it, so I'm expecting to feel very good about it.
It's very much about being in tune with who you are. One of the descriptions that you've used is learn to move with the cycles of nature and love yourself into whole body health. Now, the problem is that we are, for the most part in Western society, really taught to hate our bodies. And it only used to primarily be women, but it's men now as well. But we're bombarded with images, aren't we, on the daily, which tells us that we're not good enough, we're not pretty enough, our skin is not clear enough, we've got too many wrinkles. And it's a constant, isn't it? So you're tackling not only what people are putting in, but also the way people are thinking about themselves, aren't you?
It's very much about the mind-body connection. One of the courses that I've done, trainings that I've done, is mind-body psychology. So that to me is absolutely fascinating. And, you know, you go into things like the placebo effect and how people are causing their chemistry to change, which causes their body to change. So, you know, all that to me is so important. And you're absolutely right. We have been taught to punish ourselves, to try to punish yourself into health. And it absolutely just makes no sense when you think about it.
Well, and the thing is, because there's profit in punishment, isn't there? There isn't profit in us accepting us accepting ourselves who we are, because obviously the profit is in all manner of things, plastic surgery. I mean, the diet industry. My sister-in-law always used to say to me, dieting makes you fat. And she's absolutely right. You know, I thought it was a great expression because it's so true, isn't it? Yours isn't about diet. Yours isn't about dieting to lose weight, is it? Like you say, we're not dealing with calories. All that stuff is so old-fashioned now, isn't it? And destructive for us.
Yeah, it's the holistic view. So if your goal is to lose weight, great. You know, that it will benefit eventually because your body comes back into balance and you will find your natural balance. But you're right, it's not a weight loss course. It's nothing about there's no system, there's no protocol, there's not even any answers. It's very much empowerment. It's about empowering the individual to know what they need for their body. So, for example, we've got right from the get-go in the first week, I'm going to teach people how to muscle test, so that they can muscle test to know if the food that they're about to eat is going to do them any good or not. So then you've got the choice. As long as you know, you've got the choice, rather than just guessing or eating it unconsciously and not knowing what it's going to do for you.
How, without us breaking any YouTube rules, how do you muscle test for food?
Right, same way you would any other way. So with muscle testing, what happens is when we say a positive statement or we think positive thoughts, it's about chemistry again. It sets off reactions in your body that make your body stay strong. And when we think or say negative thoughts or words, your body will become weak. There's a little bit more to it. There's sort of techniques and things you have to do to gauge it and get your own baseline.
Can you give me an example of a positive?
Yeah, so if you make a positive statement and say it in the positive and in the present, such as, what should we say? Well, basically, if you say, my name is Sonia, that will be a good test. For food, you could, when it comes to food, you don't really even have to say the statement. This is the point, you're just looking at the food, or you hold the food, and your body
reaction.
Yeah, your body will be reacting anyway. So then we do a muscle test, and there's many different ways to do it. One way is to hold the circle like this. And then again, you have to sort of establish your own baseline to start with. But the idea would be you would say the statement, my name is Sonia, and check if it's strong. And then you could say, my name is Bob, and get a weak response. So it's gauging how strong your muscles are when you say positive and negative statements.
In reaction to something. So, for example, I don't like olives. So if I saw olives, my muscles would react how?
Not necessarily. So it's not really always about what you think you like. It's about
what's good for you.
Yeah. So perhaps you don't like olives for a different reason than they're not good for you. Perhaps there's another reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these are all little sort of nuances we will discuss. It's very, very interesting to me.
It's fantastic. It's really fascinating for me because, as you've said before, I think in your leaflets, this is about tapping into your actual body knowing, right? Your wisdom. That's why it's called what it's called. The course is called that for a reason, right? But the thing is that, I mean, I'm going to ask questions that you might necessarily not have an answer to, but I think sometimes it's difficult for people to really understand the messages they're receiving, right? So people struggle, for example, to follow their intuition sometimes because they confuse fear with what their real intuition is really telling them. How are you able to kind of separate that out? Do you know what I'm getting at? I don't know if I'm articulating that very well, right?
Yeah, I do. And when it comes to what we should eat, should is a word I probably shouldn't have said. Eradicate that. When it comes to eating, that's a better way of saying it, and food and diet and health. Yeah, there can be a lot of things attached to it. That it's a really good point you've made, because we are conditioned. We've got all these voices from childhood. So we're going to talk a lot about that as well. So it's about learning to be mindful and learning to be aware. So are you craving, for example, a donut because you really need the donut and it's going to do you some good? Or are you craving the donut because it was a comfort when you were a child? Yes. And therefore you're actually craving some comfort at the moment? So that's a very simple example, but it's a really good point that you make. And we're going to do those exercises every week so you can practice to become aware, because that's really the key. The key is awareness.
Because actually the thing is that diets are useless as such. I mean, the kind of dieting, calorie counting stuff, because you literally have to change your life, right, in order to change your body, right? It's not something you can do for 6 months or take some Ozempic or whatever and lose a ton of weight and change your face and then everything will come back on as soon as it all starts. So that's not what you're aiming for. You're aiming for a lifelong change where people are able actually also to look at their psychological approach to eating, because you're absolutely right. The thing is, eating is an emotional issue for so many people. You talk about that donut. That is exactly what I did as a child. I ate through comfort. I comfort ate. So it took me a very long time to break that cycle. It's hard. Diet is a bad word, Deborah. It really is a bad word because it has so many awful negative connotations. I love what you're doing, Red. I think that you're really aiming to change people's full perspectives on food and what they're putting in their body.
That is exactly what it is. It's a complete perspective change. So, you know, if you're up for that, fantastic. It's not scary. It's about introducing and new ideas, making adjustments, really. And it's what's easy and doable. And I'm absolutely not for any, you know, telling anyone what to do. I'm going to put all the ideas there, choose what works, what you think is relevant. Try, practice what you think is relevant and introduce and make little adjustments along the way. That's the way I've managed to change my health and my life. So that's what I'm doing. It's all about empowerment. It's about, yes, lifelong change, but it is in here as well.
And you also have to enjoy your life, right? So my life would not be enjoyable if I didn't have my cold beer at the end of the day or whatever it is that I like, my little treats, because you do have to. But I'm somebody who believes in moderation. The way was able to finally stabilize my weight, Red, was to realize that I like lots of things. You know, I love chocolate and I love nuts and all the things that, you know, but have everything in moderation. So I'm a moderate these days. And it worked for me. I dropped a ton of weight without dieting. Finally. But we've got questions coming in. One of the questions is, what about anorexics? Isn't that a whole other ball game?
It is. And I'm not claiming to be able to cure anybody of anything like that. That definitely needs a qualified professional in that specific subject.
This is painful. Just realized I used to eat when I was left alone by myself when very young. Yeah, and that's something to be unpacked as well. That's the type of thing that you'd be prepared to be dealing with, really, isn't it? And unpack the pain, because this is a painful comment here, isn't it? This is about somebody who's feeling kind of isolated, alone, and they ate because it made them feel better about themselves. That kind of stuff takes a lot of unpacking.
Yeah, and it is your own journey. As I say, I'm going to be there to hold your hand, guide you, give you ideas, but it's definitely not something that anybody else can solve. There's no answer. The answer is going to be found within you as you change your perspective and make adjustments. The second week, we're going to talk about both those things you just said there were a little bit related. The second week, we're going to talk about stress and pleasure. So the
what and the impact on our body.
Exactly. So it's a really interesting, this to me is absolutely fascinating, the juxtaposition that people restrict. And how many times do you hear people say things like, oh, I shouldn't have that. I know I shouldn't have that. And you think, well, why shouldn't you have it?
Right.
Well, I know that's no good for me. Do you? But you're going to enjoy it. So if you eat it in, as you say, in moderation, with full enjoyment and with full presence, and, you know, that's a great experience that nourishes your soul. The fact is, the stress chemicals of constantly trying to restrict and take away and deprive yourself, that's not nourishing for the soul or the body.
This is about building people up. I love that. We love this. This is a contribution to society. And we have the opportunity for two of our gorgeous, glorious viewers to take part. I presume it can be male or female. This isn't sex exclusive, is it? Right. So you know the deal, gang. So the idea is that obviously there are people who will be watching on catch up. So I changed the kind of rules of our competitions. And what I do is for the following day. So what I want you to do is contact me at my email, soniapoulton@sky.com. I know our glorious mods will put it in the live chat, and I'll also put it in the description as well. By 6 p.m. tomorrow night, I will randomly choose two people, and the information of those two people will be sent to Red, and you will have won an opportunity to take part in this 6 weeks to Empowered Health. Absolutely wonderful, Red. That's really generous of you, extremely generous of you. And anybody who's not able to, how can they sign up if they wish? There's a lot of interest.
Right, so you can go onto my website, eatsense.co.uk. Eat Sense is the antidote to dietary nonsense. And there's a tab there, Body Wisdom course, and you can sign up through there. Alternatively, if you want to chat to me about it, you can contact me at contact@eatsense.co.uk. I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Anything else that you started off by saying, I feel nervous. You haven't sounded nervous throughout this, right?
Thank
You
you.
have no problem at all. Is there anything else that you would like to say that you want people to know about what it is you're doing?
It's all about empowerment, people. Let's not listen to, well, I think I should say, let's be discerning. Let's try to be very discerning and get in touch with yourself. It's about awareness, balance, and empowerment.
Indeed.
Looking forward to meeting some new friends through this. Thank you, Sonia.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you for being with us, Red. Everybody, this is Red Willow, and isn't she lovely? Not at all controversial as the rest of our guests.
Nice way to end Friday.
What's that? What did you say? Got a way to end Friday?
Nice way to end Friday.
Wonderful. Lovely to have you with us, everybody. Red Willow. She's lovely, isn't she?
Thank you,
Take good
Sonia.
care of yourself, sweetheart. Thank you so much. Lovely. And it is a very generous offer, extremely generous offer. So thank you, Red. Brilliant. Cats can be fussy eaters, Stephen. Yes, indeed, they can. How are you all, my little blossoms out there? How are you all? How are you all? Okay. Slightly change the tone. Slightly change the tone, my little darlings. I want to reflect on somebody who was a great contributor to this show. Today, the brilliant, funny, kind statement analyst Peter Hyatt is being laid to rest. A funeral service will be held at 10 a.m. today at Brookings Smith, 133 Centre Street, Bangor in Maine, USA, which is where Peter lived. Relatives and friends are invited to call from 9 a.m. until time of service. I think I might already have put a link in the description. If I haven't, I will put a link at the end of the show, because it is also possible to view the service remotely. I sent a sympathy card to his family yesterday, just saying how much we appreciated him round here and how he will be sorely missed. The last time I interviewed Peter was for episode 14 of Wake Up. It was in July 2024, and it was unusual. And it was unusual for a reason. Actually, I think I've still got, let me just bring this in so you will actually see it. And what was unusual about it, and we don't do this very often, was that it was a pre-record. And it was a pre-record because I was actually in court on that day. And so I'd done a pre-record with Peter, and you can actually see it. This was the ad for it. He was on with the lovely, well, separately, but they were both on the same show, Dominique Samuels and Peter Hyatt. And I went through that recording yesterday, and there was a part of it that really sort of threw me, because it's the way that I introduce it. It's almost like, sometimes you just know. Peter had told me something during that recording, which I, not during the recording, at the end of the recording rather, about his health. He eventually died with cancer, but he told me something else, which he hasn't made public. And so I'm not going to make public because he trusted me with that. And so unless his family choose to make any further details about his health public, I won't, other than to say I was very aware for several months that Peter was sort of due to leave us. He was due to leave us. But here's the thing, is that Peter, I found out about Peter the same way that many people found out about Peter, and that was through this incredible interview that he'd done with Richard D. Hall to do with Madeleine McCann. And it was the Embedded Confessions, where he was doing statement analysis on Kate and Jerry McCann. And it was so inspirational and so eye-opening that after that, I'd approached him and said, I'd really love to interview you. And I interviewed him on another platform. And actually what happened, it led to me being reported to the McCann's lawyer. And one day I will reveal the full details of that and what actually went on. But both Peter and I were reported to the McCann's lawyers saying, defaming the McCanns, nobody did anything about it. Nobody did anything about it. I suggest that's, and I said to Peter, I don't necessarily always have to enjoy litigation, but as an investigative journalist, you have to deal with it quite often. But I would be more than happy, and Peter knew this, than to stand in a court of law opposite Kate and Jerry McCann. That I would not have a problem with whatsoever. So Peter, well, incredible guy. He left us on March the 5th. There was actually information online that he had died previous to that, and I had been told that he had died previous to that, and it was from good sources. And I very much regretted that. It happened on the live show, and then I went offline and I tweeted about it because I was absolutely gutted, and I sent a message to his family. And I discovered during that night that it wasn't true. But I knew he was extremely ill. But he left us on March the 5th. And he grew up in Westbury, New York. He had 9 siblings, and he loved his ball and baseball. Yes, he did. He ended up living in Burnham. He had many, many interests, including music, reading, chess, time with family and friends. He's survived by his wife and his best friend, Heather, his former wife, Anne, his 6 children, who were his absolute pride and joy. Whenever I interviewed him, he would always mention them, and his grandchildren. He had 11 grandchildren who were also his absolute joy. And I thought it was most appropriate to play a clip of what he had said during our last interview. And this is regarding Christian Bruckner. Christian Bruckner, of course, had become the patsy in the Madeleine McCann case, the German prisoner. And this was Peter commenting on Christian Bruckner. But listen to how I start the conversation. This is about a 5-minute conversation. And this is for us to remember together the brilliant work of Peter Hyatt. I would like a comment on the insane Madeleine McCann situation in Germany. As we know, I mean, Peter, it's difficult for me to say this without laughing. And I'm not laughing, of course, about the disappearance of a 3-year-old child. I'm laughing about the fact that I've never seen, in 30 years of journalism, I've never seen law enforcement really be so keen to fit a case to a suspect. And that was what was happening with Christian Bruckner. They announced in July 2020, pretty much at the height of lockdown in the UK, that they had their number 1 suspect. He was a German man, actually convicted of heinous crimes, and he's recently been in court again, as we know. And they've done everything they can to shoehorn poor Madeleine into this case, and it's bit by bit, it's all fallen away. But there was a statement that was recently released from the German court, and I think it's interesting, and I know that you've looked at it. And it was because obviously what was happening is they've been trying to keep Christian Bruckner inside longer so that they can prove that he took Madeleine. They're failing miserably. What is your overview about what has taken place with Bruckner, Peter?
Well, the German prosecutors, I don't speak German. I know but a few words, and the analysis has to recognize that I'm going to miss nuance. Of course, I work with German analysts, so it's always good there. But even in this case, it wasn't necessary. We take a step back. We recognize we're not going to see nuance. And German prosecutors revealed with each statement, with each passing year, as if they're declaring, I don't believe my own words.
Goodness.
The weakness. And so, yes, we have proof, and we have evidence that she's dead, and we sent it to the McCanns, and they hadn't got anything. And it was publicity stunt after publicity stunt after publicity stunt. Each one has failed. When you go before a judge, now a judge, you count on human nature, is going to want to protect his or her own reputation. So hearing this nonsense and hearing it turned over and over again, it did make headlines. It made headlines across America, but they never had any evidence to present, evidence of the death. You just bring it right out. You know, it was always held back, and I think that they were hoping for book deals, Netflix, BBC, whatever, but somehow scoring more fame and money. And it has to reach a point of exhaustion. Each time I've predicted that they've jumped the shark here, it's not going any further.
Absolutely. The most recent statement, which I know that you've looked at, is the court has, as requested by the defence, lifted the arrest warrant as the court denies that there is an urgent suspicion of guilt on all counts. So that, to me, in my amateur understanding, is literally what you've just said there. And that is the court, they're washing their hands of this. I don't want to be involved in this. I do not want to prolong his arrest warrant. I want to get rid of this quickly off my table as much as possible. Is that essentially what's going on now?
Yes, it's reached the point, you know, you struggle to laugh, not laugh. I struggle not to laugh. it reached the height of absurdity where a judge is saying, I'm not part of this.
Wow.
Sorry, you're not going to bring me down. And one last point on the analysis with that is we had statements over the years, not a lot, but statements over the years from Bruckner's attorney. And sometimes we'll look at a statement and people say, well, the attorney wrote that, and that may be true. An attorney wrote a statement that is supposed to be the subject statement. And what we can learn from that is, does the attorney believe the person did it or not? And this attorney's statements, the few over the years, showed he had confidence in an almost dismissive way. You know, his client's a bad guy, but he didn't do this.
Yes. And that's it, isn't it? Is that, you know, he's absolutely aware, almost like Jay Slater's mum, of who he's dealing with, what this character is, but he knows he didn't do this. So I think it's an interesting turn of events. Any idea, because you've now been watching this Madeleine McCann case for a very long time, any idea where we're likely to go next with it? Are we going to get another Patsy pop up? That's
possible. I remember the German prosecutors put out a statement saying, hey, if you were in Portugal, you know, this year, that year, and you bought marijuana, can you give us a call? You know, that type of
farcical.
Silliness. Yeah.
It's farcical. They've reduced it to a farce, haven't they? This is the thing, is you know, that laugh that I had at the beginning, as I say, it's not a disrespect to Madeleine. It's what they've been prepared to do in order to be able to try and make the shoe fit Christian Bruckner. And but it's also farcical how the media took it up as well and declared that he was, you know, the number one suspect. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, it is something that churned by media. Media does work, and we've seen this, I think, very broadly since 2020. Media does work in lockstep. And so everyone wants to cash in. Everyone wants to be part of a story. We found Madeleine as a young woman now, and that, you know, that sort of thing. They take it because it benefits them.
They take it because it benefits them. Rest in peace, Peter Hyatt. Peter brilliantly understood that things that weren't said, as well as the things that were mattered, had importance. I cannot thank him enough. He opened my eyes to so much. He educated me. He was indeed a kind and gentle man, and he will be deeply and sorely, sorely missed. That full interview is available on Wake Up, episode 14. And in previous interviews, he talked at great length about Anthony Fauci and about C-19 and all manner of things. A wonderful, wonderful human being. Wonderful human being. He will be very, very seriously missed. Yes, he will indeed. Right. Deep breath there. Deep breath there. How are you all doing in the comments? Right, guys, I'm off to see my son. Catch you Monday if I can. Much love. See you later, TD. See you later. Right. Happy Potter has been in touch. Happy Potter, look at that sky, people. Happy Potter said, this is a clip from a house explosion video in the US last year. Look at that sky. What happened with that sky? What happened with that sky, Happy Potter? Can anyone tell me? I'd love to know. It's weird. It's weird. Yes, such a gentleman, Kath. Such a gentleman. Anyone seen? Thank you, Jacqueline. Anyone seen the new adverts for Diesel clothing? Let me see if I can bring them up, because there are naked bodies on a table and people are eating pizza off them. Make of that what you will, right? Let me see if I've got some of them to hand that I could actually show you. And guess who's in it? Radiation clouds, says Kath, right? So these are two bodies on the table, and there is pizza on one of these bodies. Spirit cooking, says MB. Guess who else is in this advert? This is going to throw you. Check it out. Check out. See if anybody. Many of our overseas viewers won't necessarily recognize this individual, but let me just show you, because this is somebody who has such terrible, dreadful body dysmorphia and is a terrible influence. Katie Price, she's in that video. I don't know what they've done to her body. But it's just such the weirdest advert. I just thought I'd flag it up to you. Was it cold when you got up this morning, Stephen? Deborah says, no, thank God. Absolute hideous. They're actively mocking the Didier situation and making reference to Pizzagate, says Marco. It's bizarre. It reminded me immediately of what was that clothing company last year who was caught doing bondage stuff with children involved? Remind me, brand. One of you is going to say it any second. Yes, monstrous kids, absolute monstrous. I want to talk about Dumblaine, Balenciaga. See, look, none of you mess around. Thank you so much, guys. Love you. Oh, MK, can you wish my Alfie happy 18th? I absolutely can. Happy birthday, Alfie. 18. Woohoo. 1 and 8, 9. So you are almost there, closing a complete chapter. Wonderful. The end of your teen years. How fantastic. And what an amazing parent you have. Happy birthday to you all. And the thing is about when our children have birthdays, I always think that it's such an achievement also for the parents to kind of like put up with them all these years. Happy birthday, Alfie. That's right. In the comments. You're welcome, MK. You're absolutely welcome. Welcome. Right. Let us talk about Dumblaine. Dumblaine. I'm absolutely delighted that I'm going to be joined, it looks like next week, by a brilliant researcher into the Cullen Report. The Cullen Report, Lord Justice Cullen was the judge who oversaw the Dumblaine inquiry, and there are a lot of problems with it. And I've been trying to track down this person who has researched it at great length, and he responded to me last night and said, yes, he'd love to come on and talk. So hopefully I can arrange that for next week. But I'm going to tell you my version and what I know. Okay. Let's bring in some images, I think. And I've actually gone shivery, and I don't know why that is. That's quite weird, isn't it? These things do happen when you're kind of like talking about things that, you know, can still impact you. Okay, Dumblaine, let's talk about it. On March the 13th, 1996, local predator Thomas Hamilton entered the side door of a primary school in Dumblaine in central Scotland, killed 16 pupils and 1 teacher, and injured 15 others before killing himself. The whole act of carnage lasted about 3 minutes, but it remains one of the deadliest mass shootings in British history. And as I say, next week, I'm going to be joined by a researcher who's looked into the official inquiry and the clear problems around it. Dumblaine, central Scotland, approximately 43 miles from Edinburgh and 33 miles to Glasgow. And what happened was Thomas Hamilton was, as I say, a local predator with deep connections with the Scottish and English establishment. He went, first of all, into the assembly hall. He fired a shot. Then he went to the gym, fired first at adults and then at the children. He was, for the most part, a disgruntled and twisted ex-scout leader who was bitter and angry because, being a paedophile and a procurer, life was about to come on top for him. And what often happens is people like this, they get kind of feel they're boxed into a corner and they go crazy. He shot 9 more rounds after he had killed these children and the teacher. He shot 9 more rounds through a classroom window for another class. Children thankfully had time to get on the floor and hide. In total, he shot 105 rounds, as I say, in around 3 minutes. All the children that he killed were under the age of 6. He also, as I say, killed their teacher, Gwen Mayer. He injured others. Thomas Hamilton was a deeply disturbed individual. I'm sure you're all familiar with who he is and what he looks like, but we shall bring it up just in order for reference. Here's an image of him that I always think kind of says rather a lot about who he was. He was raised by his grandparents. He believed his mum was his sister. He was a scout leader. He ran gym clubs. I've been contacted by several of the boys who were at his gym clubs. They were made to run around topless so he could see their little bodies kind of bouncing up and down. He would touch them inappropriately. I've got some pictures. There were lots of rumors about him. So what was happening was that less and less parents were sending their children to his classes. He knew there was a problem, but there was also another problem going on. And that was a school, Queen Victoria School, QVS. It was was and is for children of the military services, has long-standing links to high office. Its patron at the time was Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. A number of high establishment people visited the Queen Victoria School, including Prince Andrew. Thomas Hamilton, I believe, was taking the boys from Queen Victoria School and procuring them for members of the British and Scottish establishment, legal, political, and royal and judicial. And what was happening was Thomas Hamilton was taking lords and various other people into Queen Victoria School at the weekends. They were picking up young boys and taking them out for the day. That's what was happening, and these boys were being abused. And obviously, one of the things that people think about when they think about Dumblaine is what happened in terms of the gun ban. And the gun ban was very interesting because up to that point, I mean, the whole big thing was that how was Thomas Hamilton, with all of his history and all of the issues surrounding him, including allegations of child abuse, of being violent, of taking children off onto islands. This is a brilliant book, Dumblaine Unburied, by Sandra Utley, given to me by two brilliant people, Ellen and Hugh, and I greatly appreciate it. But Thomas Hamilton was taking children off to islands without permission, right? And it's all in here. And a lot of this didn't make the Cullen report, didn't make the Cullen inquiry. The Cullen inquiry was a big problem. That was the official inquiry, which was to make sense of Dumblaine. And obviously, one of the most outrageous things that happened in the Cullen inquiry was that Lord Cullen said that these documents are not going to be available for 100 years. And people couldn't see what had happened at Dumblaine for 100 years. So obviously we'd all be dead by then. And bit by bit, they allowed some of the documents to be released, but not enough. And I think they lied. They said, oh, no, we can't because it's got, children's names on. Well, you can redact it. Actually, I think the whole reason why we've never seen the full documents and while they are still subject to secrecy is because there are names on there. There are names of the British political, royal and legal establishment. That is the reality. And regarding the gun ban, people often think that handguns are now banned in the UK, and that's not true. That isn't true. But what happened was that further legislation was put forward. Newspapers began campaigning to ban guns. That was picked up by the public. The Snowdrop petition, because it was snowdrops that were available and could be seen that morning when the children were murdered at Dumblaine. And what happened was gun laws were radically changed. The UK now has some of the toughest laws on gun ownership in the world as a consequence of Dumblaine. It absolutely did change the game, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But there was issues, real issues. And I think this is a really interesting front page from around about the time. And this was a lord speaking out. Let me see if I can bring this up, because I think this will tell you rather a lot of what was being said then. Not so many people talk about it now. But this is Lord Burton. He was an ex-Masons leader. He said Dumblaine inquiry was a cover-up. Peers bullied me to keep quiet. And he goes on to talk about the protection that was surrounding this, that this was all to do with Freemasonry, that Thomas Hamilton, although said not to be a Mason, highly debatable, I have to say, but the involvement of Thomas Hamilton with members of the British establishment, all hidden under the cloak of secrecy that accompanies Freemasonry. It's horrible stuff. And the reality is that those children who died at the hands of Thomas Hamilton have never, ever had justice, because the full truth is not being told. And a lot of it revolves around a super secrecy group called the Speculative Society. Okay. And I mean, Lord Burton was a former Grand Master. He knew what he was talking about. Okay. He knew what he was talking about. And the fact is, Thomas Hamilton was allowed to roam around Queen Victoria School with impunity. And that was because he was procuring the boys for lords and members of the establishment. That was what was happening. That is why we can't see what has taken place. And there have been some people who've come out, some whistleblowers. For example, former housemaster Glenn Harrison, he came out and it's extraordinary because he was actually watching what was taking place. He was telling them at the school, there is a problem. These boys are being taken out at the weekends. And Lord Cullen didn't even invite him to the inquiry. He wasn't part of the inquiry. But here's the thing. Lord Cullen was almost certainly part of the speculative society. So he was part of it. And that's certainly what Lord Burton was saying anyway. Again, it's not what you hear now. When we talk about Dumblaine, we talk only about the absolute senseless loss of life and the monster that was Thomas Hamilton. But the truth is that was a massive cover-up of the British establishment, and to this day remains a cover-up. And I'm very much looking forward to exploring this in some depth, as I say, with this researcher who I had been trying to get hold of for a while, and then finally came back to me last night, and I couldn't wait to respond to him this morning. I was like, yes, please, come on next week. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you. Somehow I think I was saved. Masons and Fabians are behind so much in this country. Indeed, they are, Stephen, which is why we must highlight them. We must highlight them constantly. Here's my thing. I believe that Thomas Hamilton was allowed to do what he did. They didn't stop him. They knew he was a predator. They knew he was a pervert. They knew almost certainly he was a paedophile. He was procuring children. They knew he was dangerous. They knew he was bitter and twisted, and they let him. They let him get on with it. They let him carry handguns. He was a problem waiting to happen. And then problem, reaction, solution, right? Dialectic. Okay, we know it. That's what happened. That is what happened. He was a madman who was waiting to happen, and he took it out on children. Some of our most vulnerable. Absolutely disgusting. Hegelian dialectic. Exactly that. Exactly that, health freedom. Thank you. So we will pick this up next week, and I'm sure we'll learn so much more than I'm able to convey to you, because I'm going to be talking to somebody who's gone into this deeply and into the Cullen inquiry, and I cannot recommend this enough. This is absolutely brilliant. Sandra Utley actually lived in Dumblaine for 20 years, and I believe she was actually involved with the father of little Sophie, who was actually murdered at Dumblaine. But it is a powerful book, and it completely shows that the Cullen inquiry into Dumblaine was a cover-up. It was a whitewash, no doubt about it at all. If you're not even going to invite people who are witnesses to what's taking place at a school that is involved, that is implicated, it's a cover-up. Yes, Dale, I have to say it is another Jimmy Savile. Yes, it is indeed. Yes, it is indeed. Okay, rest in peace, all those lovely babies. But one thing I do know absolutely was that a lot of people in the establishment used to refer to Lord Cullen as the right judge. Make of that what you will. Make of that what you will, darling, darling people. Right. We're heading out of here today, sweeties. Yes, we are. Thank you. Our donators as ever. Chastity. Absolutely love that name. Thank you so much. Sid, Veronica and Alan. Thank you. I appreciate you all as ever. I can't always when you donate on the live chat, I can't see email addresses, so I can't send you a behind the scenes video. So if you'd like a behind the scenes video, and you've donated on the live chat, please feel free to contact me at soniapoulton@sky.com, and I will send you one by return. Thank you so, so much. Don't forget to enter our competition. And I've got to show you this. I absolutely love this. This is fabulous. Look at this, people. This is isn't our mod Zoe? She took that picture, actually. She's been spotting pareidolia in the sky. Pareidolia, of course, is the tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous visual pattern. That looks like a cross to me. Oh, yes, it does. That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful in this full moon week. I absolutely love it. Gorgeous. Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kath. Thank you, Faux Boyle. I can't look at him either. Who's that, Stephen? Who are you talking about? Isn't it Dilip? Isn't it brilliant? And Crazy Bunny, who is our Zoe, she says she's not religious, but sometimes you just see that stuff, right? And pareidolia, of course, is where people like see Jesus in the toast and all stuff like that. Love it. Lots of love and gratitude. Lenticular cloud loves it. I love it too. Love it, love it, love it. Right, let's rock and roll to the end of our show. We've still got time. Oh, yes, we've still got time. Thank you, Gina. God bless you, darling. Right. Let's talk about this. And by the way, Zoe just took that picture from her house. She said it's a divine message or two chemtrails. whichever one you want it to be, basically. You're welcome, Jack. Lots of love to you all. I want to talk about Dark Night of the Soul. I saw a story about Dawn Robinson from On Vogue. She's formerly of On Vogue, and it really saddened me. It turns out that despite all the success of her band, she has been forced to live in her car for the last 3 years. Now, I absolutely used to love On Vogue. Truly, I did. I actually interviewed them when I was pregnant, and I've still got it on tape. I think it might have been Cindy who said, because she'd had a baby, and she said, "Oh, look, when you're giving birth, just take all the drugs that are offered to you." And she kind of said it tongue in cheek, and I didn't. You'll be pleased to know. Anyway, it was absolutely shocking to see this video of Dawn where she was talking about it, and she actually talked about how, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. Look, I finally said it. I finally admitted to it. So I think she's been there for 3 years. She finally put it on camera that this is what I'm going through and this is what I'm experiencing. She said, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I think I'm going through, kind of like the dark night of the soul. And I want to talk about that today because that is a popular expression that gets bandied around a lot. And I want to reach out to you because you may be one of the people currently experiencing the dark night of the soul. You may not know what you're experiencing. And because I've been through it, here's my helping hand to help you through what can often be a scary and horribly confusing time. And I did think I would share part of my own journey with you, which I also have in the past and is inspired by lovely Dawn. I think that's an incredibly brave thing that she did. And what's wrong, of course, and we've seen it over and over again, is Dawn, despite being part of one of the most successful female bands in history, is broke. Right? We've seen it over and over again. Her fate has gone the way of so many music artists and pop stars, and that is they made a financial killing for their music industry handlers, but nothing for themselves because they've been exploited. But that is also a great way to enter the dark night of the soul and have a spiritual rebirth when you've been exploited, because when you hit the bottom, the only way is up, right? We all know that. And On Vogue, for those who don't know, group first rose to fame in 1989 with their single Hold On. I loved that song. It was huge, absolutely massive. They went on to have songs like Don't Let Go, What a Man. In fact, they inspired me so much that when I was leaving a particularly narcissistic relationship, I sang No, You're Never Gonna Get It as I was walking out the door. No, you're never gonna get it. Not this time. No, you're never going to get it. I did. Loved it. Absolutely loved On Vogue. I still listen to them in the shower, says Crazy Bunny. But it really reminded me a lot about what I had ended Monday's show with, and that is the stages of spiritual awakening. And because a lot of what's going on in the dark night of the soul overlaps with a spiritual awakening, and that is you will experience highly likely some form of crisis or another. And that is this period of kind of profound recognition that your life is not what you want it to be. You will experience an ego death. We talked about that. That was where you're able to kind of separate out where you end and where the world begins. And that's so important. There's a purification that also takes place, which I would suggest Dawn has experienced in her car. Like literally, you just start to realize what matters and what doesn't. Yes, you do. There's a lot of introspection when you're dealing with the dark night of the soul. And it's kind of so named because it's dark. It can get very, very dark down there. Initially, it will be so uncomfortable. That initial discomfort is enough sometimes to send people back to their old way of being. But I beg you, I pray for you, push forward, because once you break through, it will be life-changing for you. And the other thing that happens often before people enter the dark night of the soul is that their life loses meaning. It's just a bit like meh, right? And the fact is, we say this often, but your life is worth so much more than just being a meh, right? Than just being a footnote. I mean, you're here for a reason. I absolutely believe you're here for a reason. I'm just going to take Dawn's image off the screen. There's also a kind of, it's odd, but a spiritual dryness that can take place for people. And that is this kind of sense of disconnection, right? Where you're not even sure who you are anymore. Who am I? Why am I here? What is it all about? Self-doubt will creep in. You will be forced to face your shadows. I wrote a manuscript that I've talked about often, and it still exists. It's called Scaling the Shadow. And I wrote it when I was going through my own personal dark night of the soul because things just didn't make sense to me. Like the people that I had grown up with and my friends, I wasn't gelling with them in the same way. I was dissatisfied with my work. I had lots of confrontations. All these things were taking place. And that was because I was due some decent introspection, facing the shadow side of myself, right? I can be impatient. I have a hell of a temper when people rub me up the wrong way. Not for anything petty, although in the old days I'd lose my crap for stupid shit stuff. Not now. But when people hurt me or hurt mine, they better watch out, right? So I know those sides of myself. But here's what's important. And we talked about this with John as well on Monday, is it's so important not to see this progress of your life. It's not a disease. You're not ill. You're not sick. In fact, you're on the way to feeling far more healthy than you probably ever have in your entire life. But if you need to seek support, do. And being here, darling people, is a form of support. Yes, it is indeed. What happened? What happened? Thank you, Mrs. Pirate. God love you, darling. So this is very much your personal journey, you know. And as I say, if you need to seek support, reach out for it. Don't be afraid to say, I need help. Please don't be afraid to say, I need help, because I don't necessarily believe in reincarnation as such. I believe that this is kind of like one life. And so I intend to enjoy it. And I definitely don't want to be bogged down by stuff that belongs to my past. No, I do not. And that's it. And Vanessa's absolutely right. There is a vast difference between a spiritual person and a religious person. There is. But once you've been through that dark night of the soul, what you can look forward to is an absolute rebirth and transformation of who you are. And that's what's going to happen. You will get a deeper understanding of yourself, of your role in the world, and why you matter. Why you matter, people. And so here's to Dawn Robinson for having the strength and courage to speak out, because what she did instantly by putting out that video was she dispelled the myth that being celebrity is something great that will protect you for the rest of your lives. Not at all. And what she showed clearly was the exploitation that she and others have suffered at the hands of the music industry. So I want to thank you as ever for being here. Thank you all so much. It is exactly 11 a.m. on this full moon day, Mercury retrograde as well. You know, I believe in all that stuff. And but I want to thank you. I think you've been here before. Oh, do you, Ian? A few times. I see. And don't forget, Monday. So we're going to be live streaming. The aim is to live stream now from 11 a.m. Times have changed slightly, I'm afraid. It's just the way it goes. If you're unable to catch us at 11 a.m., that's fine. I will absolutely be here midweek on Wednesday, but I will be filming outside the LUCY LETBY protest on Monday. And the aim absolutely is to live stream. And I have new equipment in which to be able to do that. So I'm giving it my best shot. Yes, I am. And thank you so much, Kirsty. God love you, darling. And Crazy Bunny said, we are all here for a reason at this time of life. I absolutely believe that. I don't believe this is a coincidence. So let's make it worthwhile. Have a brilliant weekend, everybody. Thank you as ever to my two glorious, glorious mods. Thank you for all the live chat today, including the stuff that's, that makes me have to stand up and pay attention. I have no problem with that whatsoever. In fact, I really welcome it. I really, truly do welcome the freedom of speech that we're able to enjoy around here and not fall out unnecessarily. Take good care of yourself, everybody. I will see you Monday. Lots of love to you. Take care.